Hey y'all, and welcome to JayWalk Media. My name is Brian, and Charles Payne goes on an absolutely epic rant against Jessica Tarlov, proving that Republicans tend to be the nicer party compared to the Democrats, and who he quotes is absolutely amazing.
Someone punches you, you punch him back harder. That's why I grew up in Harlem.
Not if the country's at stake, right?
He won. He became president of the United States with that same personality. I don't think that, listen, I think it's worse with Biden calling MAGA. Biden's anger and vitriol and hatred for MAGA is far more worse than President Trump's individual battles with someone who crosses him. That is something that is really detrimental to this country, that the president of the United States despises half of the United States. President Biden, I said earlier today, about a week ago, I had a segment coming up, so I Googled Biden hates MAGA. Nothing but articles after articles after articles. He has expressed hatred for half of the country.
Who's writing those articles?
It doesn't matter. Look
and it's
at
not.
him. Because the bottom line is he says it. He has vitriol for them. And so does MSNBC, and so does CNN, and so does the New York Times. They have vitriol for half of the nation. They don't look at them like fellow Americans, and it's unfortunate. They try to paint them as racist. That all the things that they do to their fellow Americans who simply want a safe home, a safe community, for the children to have prosperity. They want the same thing, but they demean them all the time. That's why I think Phillips was so intriguing, because he went to a rally to find out for himself. And guess what? Golly, these are some pretty cool people. They're just like us.
I went to a Donald Trump rally a couple nights ago. Never been to one. I had an event across the street. I saw the line of people waiting in the cold for hours. And I thought, what the heck? I'm going to be a leader who actually invites people, doesn't condemn them. Met probably 50 Trump people waiting in line, every single one of them thoughtful, hospitable, friendly, all of them so frustrated that they feel nobody's listening to them but Donald Trump. A diverse crowd, people who had never been to a Trump event before. My party is completely delusional right now.
Say that he's demeaned half the country. First of all, it's 74 million people that voted for Donald Trump, and he is explicit every time he talks about the MAGA movement to say that this is a subsection of the Republican Party, which is borne out in elections when you see people voting against Donald Trump. And this idea that
but what about the people voting for him? What about the people voting for him? He gives teleprompter speeches. I mean, you have to understand that it's...
but he is talking about insurrectionists. Yes, he is.
No.
Why is he talking about January 6th? And
he says MAGA like it's a swear word, instead of a slogan.
If you get called regularly,
he's the
which
president
Democrats
of the United
do,
States.
thugs,
he's the commander-in-chief,
pedophiles.
Why can't he call the border a crisis while he's denigrating and castigating Americans? No, the voters are talking about that, Jessica.
But this point is about demeaning voters.
The president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, went to Philadelphia a year and a half ago with a Marine posted behind him.
I saw.
And gave a decidedly political speech where he insulted a large part of the country. And I've said many times on this network, and I'll say it again tonight, if people, a lot of people, spend a fraction of the time that they spend obsessing over Donald Trump the person, learning one thing about the Trump voter, things may be very different. This is Joe Biden's version of Hillary's deplorable and irredeemable.
Kellyanne's absolutely right. I'd say she hits a home run here, because that is what has happened with our discourse and our dialogue. Just the way we now talk to each other is so fundamentally broken. And even when presented with evidence, thanks to Dean Phillips, he's a Democrat, but he apparently went to a Trump rally and just talked to people. And he was shocked to find, wait a minute, these are just normal people who are angry at current situations. They want meaningful change. What a novel concept. A politician reaching across the aisle to talk to people who typically wouldn't vote for him. That's a breath of fresh air. And instead of taking what is clearly true here, Jessica Tarlov decides to go and do what Democrats do best. They either deflect or they deny. And there's nothing to deny here, so she has to deflect. And so she goes back on Trump's rhetoric, and the reality is, rhetoric is supposed to be used to bring you to the negotiating table. However, when you are typically on the left, rhetoric for you is weaponization.
Hey guys, I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing sponsor, Bonner Private Wines Partnership. Do you guys like drinking wine with dinner, but get tired of the overly sugary, mass-produced stuff that you find at the grocery store? Well, let me tell you about something different. Wines from extreme altitudes not only taste better, but are actually better for you. These wines come from up to 9,000 feet in the Andes Mountains of Argentina and are packed with polyphenols and antioxidants, compounds that are known to be good for your heart health and your overall health. What does that mean for you? Wines that are rich in flavor and pure without being full of chemicals and dyes that you'd find in generic wines. Imagine tasting smoky, bold tasting wine in a bottle that is crafted in one of the most remote places in the world. The Bonner Private Wines Partnership makes it easy to get these rare wines. Right now you can save $25 on your first order and get complimentary shipping. Just visit bonnerprivatewines.com/JayWalk to get started. This is a healthier, tastier wine experience you won't want to miss out on. Now let's get back to the video.
All right, the whole point of their rhetoric is to just change the entire debate by changing definitions. That's why Trump triggers them so much, because he uses those similar tactics and uses it against them. And it gets them absolutely hopping mad. And ultimately, because the left has taken over so many of our institutions, all right, they run the schools, they run most of Hollywood, and the reality is they run most of our media outlets. So they are using their own rhetoric and imposing it on the majority of Americans who don't fully understand what's being told. And so Tarlov is now trying her best to change the debate, and Kellyanne Conway was not having any of that. And what Charles Payne was initially talking about was the fact that leftists don't typically like going across the aisle. They don't like the average person. They genuinely do not. I'm not saying that to demean them as a group. They genuinely don't like average people. All right? They don't like dealing with blue-collar workers. There's a reason why most rich white liberals live in their gated communities and their ivory towers. They are secluded from the majority of society, and they don't understand how bad things are getting. Mainly because they're the only ones with a lot of extra money lying around. It's funny what has happened to the Democrat Party. It used to be the party of the common man, and the Republican Party was the party of business. That is almost completely shifted on its head now. And that's an indication of how bad things have gotten here in the United States. And folks, it's getting rough. But when you have Democrats like Dean Phillips who are actually talking to the average people, there is hope. Unfortunately, we still have Jessica Tarlov, who just refuses to admit that something is wrong, and she's part of that growing problem.